Kingy, what's your first thoughts?
Well, I look at the GWS team last night, and I think you'll be surprised how strong this lineup is looking. I mean, it is bulletproof. I'm wondering how far can they go, because the back line's tough to get into. Now Isaac Cummings having trouble getting his spot back as a selected member of this team, where he'd been a walk-up star. Buckley, Taylor, Haynes, Ash, Himmelberg, Whitfield. Iden goes there as well. It's a pretty good back 6 or 7. You're going to have trouble getting in there. Hogan back, Tom Green back.
Yeah.
They are getting super strong. So I just keep saying it. Don't just dance into a Giants game thinking it's all Toby. It's more than that now.
Yeah, and their opposition, they're finally picking a ruckman. So my first thoughts are that Tom Hickey would want to pull his shorts up nice and high and bring his best.
This is almost in the gun area.
Well, it's just my first thoughts. And that's my first thoughts when you are basically the only fit ruckman on a list and you're not getting a game, and for 3 weeks in a row they go with McLean in the ruck and Amati, and you're overlooked, that must sting. And they're coming up against your man Briggsy. And I'm just saying, my first thoughts are that Tom Hickey playing for his future and would want to bring a strong effort because he's been disappointing.
There's a couple of other random ones, right? So the Dogs have got back their interceptors in Richards and Jones.
Yep.
Liam Jones so critical now to them. The managed pair of the Tigers, Dusty and Koch. A debutant at the Bombers, Elijah Sardis. Everyone's been so excited to see this guy.
Yep.
And the Cats without Hawkins and Blitzhalves. What are you expecting? We just don't see them without these two very often.
So I want to speak about that game as well, because this Saturday game, both of them really, and it's a shame that they're both on at the same time, and that's another issue for the AFL to sort that out, why this is going up against each other. But how did Geelong line up? Because Port Adelaide are so small in their defensive stocks, but I'm looking at Geelong's backline and just the way that it will be named. They've got Kolajasny, Ratugolea is back in for Hawkins, Henry, De Koning and Stewart. Which one of those, and I'll probably look at Ratugolea, Henry or De Koning, will go forward as a surprise move to test Mackenzie, who's going to have his hands full with Cameron, and Jonas, who's 188 centimetres. So of those three, Kingy, Ratugolea, Henry and De Koning, I think one of them definitely starts forward. Which one of you?
Definitely starts forward.
I think definitely, and it's probably not De Koning, and I don't want to see that because I think he's so important with Stewart, but does Ratugolea or Henry play forward? I think one of them definitely does.
Skinny ground down there. They like being a little bit taller and then just keep intercept marking the ball. I think they'll all start down back.
I think they'll all start back.
Yeah, I do.
Right.
They're happy to be tall down there.
So
and I think that Tom Stewart's the wild card now. He gets some midfield opportunity, a bit like Jack Sinclair for the Saints.
Inside Tom Stewart, I'd love to see Gary Rowan 3 to 5 minute burst on ball per quarter.
As a ruckman?
No. Hopefully not as a ruckman, and hopefully Stanley can stand up a bit more than what he has done in the last 3 or 4 weeks. But just unleash Rowan. Like, their midfield is a mess. They're getting belted in the midfield every week. He plays with intensity. Clearly his endurance isn't up to the level that you can play significant minutes in the midfield, but Rowan's the wild card that I'm looking forward to. And Clarko's back, Kingy.
Clarko's back. That's the biggest in for the Kangaroos, and we'll discuss that a bit later on. But I just think that it's time to get on with it now as a footy club. Your coach is back. Enough's enough in terms of the dispirited performances.
Let's move on to a new segment which debuted last week with immediate impact, Kingy, it must be said.
Well, we put 2 in the gun last week. Don't get the match up on Toby Green wrong and Mason Cox. You need to fire up.
And I think we may have mentioned Bevo as well.
Yeah, you touched on Bevo. You got
Well,
you can't open your mouth with that beverage falling out.
It's about time. Gee whiz.
I'll tell you what I'm going to put in the gun. It's funny, we come up with the same player today.
We did, actually.
Which is extraordinary. Yeah. But I want to go elsewhere. I want to go elsewhere to start. I'm going to put Jack Martin in the gun. Now, before you jump all over me and say, he was terrific last week, he's done this before. Round 1, 2020, kicked 4 against Richmond, and the next 7 games, 5 goals. You go forward to his last 8 games of that season, 3 goals. You go to 2021, round 2, he kicks 3. 5 goals in the next 10 games. So big droughts. Last year, 12 games, 12 goals. I know he's been injured. I know his body's failed him on occasion. This year, 7 games. He kicked 3 against the Hawks in round 16, and he backed it up with 3 last week. I want to see him get on a run now.
Yep.
I want to see his last month be strong, consistent football. His body's now in good order. I want to see him be a meaningful contributor on the scoreboard because Curnow needs support with Harry not there at the moment. So do it again, Jack.
I like it.
Play it again, Jack, is probably where I should go. But Jack Martin, back it up.
Play it again, Jack. 1300 736 736. Is there anyone that you want to put in the gun? I'm just putting Simon Goodwin and Max Gawn in the gun.
Simon Goodwin?
Yeah. They've
What's he done?
opted not to select Brodie Grundy against your team, North Melbourne, and I think it's a missed opportunity not to give Max a rest. So Max Gawn is doing a lot of work, and he's doing it incredibly well and has helped clearly turn the season around and has them as an absolute force as we run up to the premiership. But he can't do it alone. And he may need to do it alone in the finals, and that's fine. But you've got to give him an in-game rest throughout the season. This was the opportunity to do it. If I see Max Gawn play 100% game time in the last quarter again against North Melbourne, that is ridiculous. And I'm not sure that you want to be putting Van Rooyen in the ruck. I'm just not, these fans. So whilst I don't think Brodie Grundy is in your best team, and he probably won't be for finals, I thought it was a missed opportunity not to give Max a rest. You can't burn...
On the runway, mate.
You cannot burn this guy. You can't.
We've got 500 minutes of footy to go.
32 years of age. If he goes down, their premiership hopes goes down with it.
So, but you can say that for a lot of players.
But when you've got the opportunity to manage him, and I've seen the Pies do it. You sub out Pendlebury, you sub out Mitchell, you give Maynard a managed rest at times. You can't burn Max Gawn out. You just can't do it. I'm surprised they've gone with him alone again in the ruck.
Well, I'm not surprised by that because you've got to get your 23 in order. You got to work out who your best sub is. You got to work out when to bring him on. You got to work out what your forward mix looks like. So the gap between 1 ruck and 2 is huge because that's tampering with what your final side wants to look like. And to bring Grundy in, you don't get. I disagree with that totally.
So are you happy for Gawn just to go it alone again like he did in the second half on the weekend, like he's done in most of their wins, and play 100% game time in the last quarter? And if it's not Gawn,
he's done that the last 3 weeks, but that's the only time that he's done that.
Yeah,
so I think that's an anomaly.
Coincided with Grundy not being there, essentially.
But the games had to be won. The game last week, if he didn't play,
he
had 7 of. He had not against North Melbourne.
No, it doesn't.
I'm talking about last week. Why he played 100%.
No, I get that. Yeah, and that's fine. And
you got to win the games.
And he got them over the line. But this game, they're going to win regardless of who they put out there. I think it's a missed opportunity not to take the opportunity to manage him and rest him.
Yeah, that's a fair call. I mean, that's your opinion. I think you're more inclined to get your 23 humming.
Yep.
Now that we're on the last 4-week runway.
Who else is in the gun?
Well, I've got the AFL in the gun. It's a preemptive in the gun. Now, a lot of people are misconstruing what I put out the other night on what are we calling it now? We're calling it X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it.
We're calling it X now.
So a club that's got form with this concussion situation, I think, need to have a suspended penalty hanging over whatever sanction you put to them. So it is to be a fine, and a fine of substantial nature, whether it impacts a soft cap or not. I think it's just a basic fine that serves no purpose. I think a fine that affects the soft caps is a start, but I would also put premiership points and or national draft pick sanctions as a suspended penalty, that this cannot happen again at this club for a period of time. Call it 5 years, call it 10 years. The actual management of this football club have to override and show that they are taking concussion seriously from here forward.
Would there be a risk of overreacting in this, where they would be so cautious? This is a collision game. People clash heads, they knock heads. Not always are they concussed. Like, not every time someone hits their head, they are concussed. But if that was the case and there was premiership points hanging over them, I mean, they'll be subbing every player out because they'll be that petrified that they may do the wrong thing if premiership points are up for grabs. Is there a risk that you could overreact if that was the case?
Well, potentially. But what a great space to live in. I mean, this is a club that's had 3 separate incidents
since 2016. Like,
Well, 2 in 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
But that's too many.
I'm like, yeah.
There's no grey area here.
It's not
There's
10.
too many.
It's 2. It's not 10.
So why are you worried? If it's not going to happen again, the suspended penalty makes no difference.
If you've got premiership points hanging over your footy club, we are playing a pretty fierce contact sport. Players do knock heads from time to time, but you can't sub out everyone. Otherwise, you're going to have no players on game day.
But get it absolutely right. Get all your protocols in order, your scat testing, absolutely dot every I and cross every T, or you will get whacked with this stuff. Because to this point, it hasn't been the standard we need.
There's the music, which means I'm getting a wind up. Just quickly on the Hawks. So we know that McGuinness is going to go after Dacos, and we know that Collingwood's players will not allow that to happen. So it'll be Pendlebury, it'll be Maynard, it'll be Adams. They're going to come after McGuinness. What's the response going to be from Hawthorn's players to protect McGuinness, who this is on the agenda? Very rare that you know someone's going to go to someone before the game's even started. What will the physical response be from a young Hawthorn side against the bullies from the Pies? And I love it, and I think it adds an extra development to the game. I've written about this in The Age this morning, Kingy, and I think some people may be surprised at how little time players spend at a football club. Now, clearly there's a balance with how much access you have with your players, and there's also the AFL Players Association who are pulling and pushing pretty hard to give the players the best conditions that they can probably give. But is it right that we're having teams have 20-week holidays a year and only having 15 hours a week access to their players? And when you look at how close this season is, and when you hear coaches say, look, we haven't spent a lot of time on red time, and we see players missing easy shots for goal, when we see players not able to kick on their opposite sides, I go, well, maybe you could spend a bit more time than 15 hours a week at the footy club. I'm not sure if you've watched Quarterback, the documentary on Netflix, and I get hesitant to compare us to the NFL because these guys earn millions and sometimes billions of dollars, but the amount of time that they put into studying of the game plan and the playbook, they go over and above and hire personal trainers to do extra sessions. I feel like we're taking a few shortcuts. Is that fair when you look at some of the results and close games that we've seen this year?
It's a valid discussion. It's a good discussion piece. I look at Geelong and their ability to manage the hours of contact time with their players, and they see that as an enormous positive. And I know they've got a more experienced group, and maybe that's the angle, is that if you've got this sort of group, you can take those luxuries because they understand the game and they learn what you're trying to implement a little bit quicker. But then I do think that football for a lot of our competition may only be a 3, 4, 5 year part of their life. And you do have to prepare them for life after football, and they do have to have other things going on, like studies or apprenticeships, or life after football is going to be 70 years for these guys. Yeah. So I understand the counter argument from the Players Association. So I think there's a balance. I don't know whether we're 100% correct in the balance right now, but I'd probably am more comfortable with it favouring the player and time away from the game than time in the game. Yeah. So it can be all-consuming footy, can't it?
Yeah, no, it can, and I get that the 15 hours is at the club. Then they're doing other things that are to get themselves better. Like they might be doing their own Pilates, or they might get their own massage, or they're thinking about things, or they're watching Vision at home. But I am interested in asking Ross about that because he was the coach that said it this year. He said, look, I only have 15 hours access to my players, and that's with weights and that's with massage. Now he's a pretty hard taskmaster, Ross, and I wonder whether the balance. Clearly for him, that's what he thinks works. Otherwise, he'd do it differently. But whether the balance has gone too far, and Sam Mitchell sort of said similar in the off season where players are going, we've got a lot of time off, and has it become too much? I guess is the balance that I'm interested in. I just think it's gone too far in favour of the players. You want to speak about Freo?
Yeah, I do want to speak about Nathan Fyfe because we're a long way from the Fremantle Football Club on a day-to-day basis. So everything you hear, you grab onto, and this is courtesy of Channel 7. But I just thought we'd have a listen to his impact on training when he was out there earlier in the season, and sometimes just get a greater appreciation of what this player can do for the younger guys at Fremantle. Just have a listen to this. I thought it was awesome, and that's just a small window into one training session two little breaks in training. Clearly, they're tonguing for a break there, and they're puffing like you wouldn't believe. But I hear a lot about Nathan Fyfe. I hear he's this commercial beast, and it's all about Fyfe, and it's all about this.
Yep.
But then when I hear that, I think, you know what? That this is why these guys at this stage of their career are still so important. Like what that means to a Matt Johnson to be told, hey mate, you're going to be like Patrick Cripps. You're going to be the most tackled bloke. They're going to come at you in pairs. You got to be ready for this. You got to be ready for that. I think it's terrific audio, and again, it's from Channel 7, so we're not just stealing something. But that sort of play. This is why we talked at the start of the year. What is Nathan Fyfe gettable for other clubs, and what can he teach the youngsters? When I hear that at Fremantle, I say, well, I'd be hanging on to him with both hands and making sure that he's driving these young kids to get better.
All right. Hopefully he can get out there. Look, I was surprised that the 2-year extension was there, but that's good. That's good insight because it's an insight that I hadn't seen previously from Fyfe. And you're right, we do look from the outside and make opinions on that. The biggest story of the day is Zorko and Miller, and whether the players' code is interesting. It's probably become less so, but 15, 20 years ago, you would never ever dob an opposition player in for an incident on field. That's not the case now, and this is a serious issue. We're not making light of this. So, firstly, took Miller last night late at about 6 o'clock last night. The AFL had overridden and suspended him for conduct unbecoming. He's going to miss a week. Clearly, the Gold Coast Suns are unhappy about that. They released a pretty scathing statement and saying that his reputation has been questioned. Here is Dane Zorko speaking on SENQ this morning after this finding. I mean, we can't make light of the fact that this is serious, Kingy, but if it is the case, it's not a 1-week suspension, and the way that it's been handled, to your point earlier on, is really questionable, how we got to this stage where they let him off on Monday and suspended him on a Thursday. But have you got some thoughts on the relationship between Zorko and Miller and the way that Dane Zorko carries himself or has carried himself?
Yeah, I just think Dane Zorko's been on the wrong side of these instances in the past, and he's probably been. Players haven't gone after him like he's gone after Tuke Miller. I just think it's a strange feeling for me, and I can understand the resentment from other players about Dane that he is not a popular player amongst the code, because when the shoe was on the other foot, he's gone full bore, and effectively he's got Miller suspended. There's no other way of looking at this. He's effectively ensured that Tuke Miller is not playing this week. Now, I find that a bit of a double standard for Dane. You know, we had the Harrison Petty stuff, I think it was last year or late the year before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a dangerous precedent to set if you're going to go down this path of and you can argue whether the action is suspendable or not, but if it is, it's 3 weeks. It's not 1. So if they've found a middle ground somehow. But in terms of Dane now just moving on, I don't think other players are just moving on.
So what I'd love is to hear from Tuke Miller, because we haven't heard from him at all. Now, last night there was about a 1-line statement from him where he says he accepted the penalty, and I think there was an apology there if Dane felt like that has what had happened. But I need the club to put up Tuke Miller, and we need to ask him the question, because his reputation has been questioned, and Zorko's had his say a couple of times now, and we haven't heard from Miller. So did you do what has been alleged needs to be asked, and then we need to hear the response from Tuke Miller. So until we get that, it's really hard to make a judgment, because it's a really serious one, and I'm with you. If it's happened, it's 3, not 1. And the AFL's handling of it is strange, and another example of why Brad Scott can leave 9-10 months ago, and we still don't have a footy boss, which we've touched on a lot this year.
So we've put up the Twitter poll, should the Gold Coast be appealing the Tuke Miller suspension, and it's 50-50 at the moment, which surprises me. I think if you're the player, I think the club should challenge this, should appeal this to protect their own player. It's okay. So Dane Zorko's coming out and thanking the club for supporting him this week. A Gold Coast supporting Tuke Miller in not challenging the validity of this suspension?
Because their words are, but their actions aren't. So Wayne Campbell was quick to release a statement last night, but You would be sceptical that this was a deal that had been come up between the club and the AFL. They said they accept the decision, but we're extremely disappointed. They go on to speak about his character and reputation being questioned, and they're clearly upset by this. So you can have your say on that. It's a strange issue, and the relationship between Zorko and Miller has another chapter to it. In the game, we didn't touch on just one player that I wanted to mention, because I'm a huge fan of the thrill seeker, Riley Thilthorpe, but it's about time that the thrill seeker delivers at Adelaide. So I want to put that on the agenda this morning, Kingy. Pick 2 behind Jamara Ugle-Hagan in 2020, and we know what Jamara is doing. Thilthorpe's kicked 17 goals this year. That's just one a game. He kicked more goals in his first season than what he's kicked this year. He's 200 centimetres. He weighs over 100 kilograms. I want Riley Thilthorpe to play like that now. And you can't rely on Taylor Walker to kick you 7 in the showdown every week. You can't rely on Fogarty. He is the man. And how quickly Adelaide rebuild this footy club and get back to playing finals, I know it's a big ask, but will largely revolve around how quickly Riley Thilthorpe can get it. So he's just a bit meek and mild-mannered for me at the moment. So I'd love the thrill seeker to do what he did in his first game and kick 5 and come out and just remind the footy world why he was selected at pick 2 in 2020.
Is he the man?
Well, he needs to be.
You say that he's is he the man?
He's only 21 years of age, so you just got to be a little bit careful when you speak about forwards like this. But if you look at players that have been taken as key forwards in and around the time that he was, so Ben and Max King are those players. They're playing better football than Thilthorpe, as much as we criticise them at times. He needs to do more than what he's doing, and I just wanted to put that on the agenda this morning.
Hey, I've got a message that comes from a past great of the NFL, Al Davis, and this is for teams like the Adelaide Crows, the Gold Coast Suns, Port Adelaide if they want to finish in the top 2, the Geelong Football Club, the Giants, the Swans, whoever you want to mention this week. It's simple.
Just win, baby.
Just win, baby. It's an old Al Davis saying. It's a ripper. Put up or shut up.
Yep.
It's crunch time now. It's on. We've got 4 weeks to go. If you want to play finals, we'll get the job done against a fellow competitor. If you want to finish top 2, hey, Port, go to Geelong and beat Geelong without Hawkins, without blitz halves. Get the job done. So it's put up or shut up now.
The Blues.
That's the phase we're in.
The Saints, the Lions, they're all in that phase. Just win,
baby.